Welcome back to our course on Excel 2013. In this section we're going to look at printing, and the first thing I want to do is to do a very straightforward print of this particular worksheet just to show you some of the basic ideas, and then we'll add a level of sophistication later on in this section. Now if all I want to do is to quickly print out the contents of this particular sheet, if I click on the File tab to go into Backstage View, one of the options in Backstage View is Print. And with that there are a number of settings. If when you go into print you're absolutely confident that what you're going to print is exactly what you want, it's going to look absolutely fine, maybe it's something you've done many times before, you can just click that print button and you'll get a single copy of what you're going to print. If you need more than one copy, there's a copies button to the right of it, and you can say how many copies you actually want. The rest of this is largely optional, but perhaps the second one not so much. Choosing the printer, you will have a default printer set. My default printer is currently set to OneNote because the work I've been doing recently I've been putting into notes in OneNote. I'm going to print this to a real actual printer, so I would have needed to change my printer to my printer, which is that one. Connects to the printer is ready. If I need to go into select printer properties, there's a little link there to go into the printer properties. Now because everybody's printers tend to be different, I'm not going to dwell on those now, because if I show you mine they'll probably look nothing like yours, so I'm going to skip over that and just look at the main settings, some of which here corresponds to some of the things that are in printer properties in general. Now first of all, settings. What do I want to print? By default this says print active sheets, this single worksheet, and if the worksheet has got a lot of data on it, there may be a whole load of pages, so there may be anything from 1 to potentially even hundreds of pages. Now if I want to specify a range of pages, so for instance if I said I want to print from page 1 to 2. Now you might say, well, what makes me think there are 2 pages? Well, if you look on the right down the bottom there, it tells me there are 2 pages, and that page is 1 of 2. And then I can say here print active sheets. Well, that's what I want in this case, but if you click on the drop down, I have also got the option to print the entire workbook, so that's every sheet in the workbook, or a selection. Now one of the features we're also going to look at a little bit later on in this section is what's called the print area, and if you've set a print area but you don't want to use it, you've also got the option here of saying ignore print area, but we'll come back to that in a little while. I'm going to stick with print active sheets. Now do I want the printout collated? Do I want to have all the page 1s then all the page 2s, or do I want page 1 page 2 for one copy, page 1 page 2 for another copy, and so on? In this case it doesn't matter, because if I only said 1 copy it won't make any difference, but if I wanted 10 copies it may help me if the printer collated them for me. Next we look at portrait orientation, or of course landscape orientation. Now this is quite important in this particular example. If you look at what's in the display on the right with portrait orientation, now watch if I switch to landscape orientation. In landscape orientation what I want to print will actually print on a single sheet, so maybe that's a better choice here. Next, the paper size. In the UK and Europe we tend to default to A4. In North America it tends to default to letter size. There's actually a setting now, one rather useful option on the Excel options. I won't show you it now, but if you look you'll find it fairly easily, I'm sure, where you can actually make these pretty much interchangeable. So if you go to print on one side and it's actually the other type of paper is the one that is the default on the printer you're using, it will actually interchange them, because a lot of people do international printing now between the North American settings and the European settings, but I'm going to stick with A4 here. I then get a choice of margins. I can go for normal margins, wide margins, narrow margins. I'm going to come back to margins in a little while. And then I can also look to scale what's in there, either with no scale, to deliberately fit the sheet on one page, to fit all the columns on one page. So even if it's really quite a big spreadsheet, it will scale it so that all the columns are on one page, and if I've got multiple pages it will cover the additional rows. Or vice versa, I can have something that will fit all the rows on one page, and if I need more than one page it will be to accommodate the other columns. Now this is a pretty simple one in this case, so all I'm going to do is say fit sheet on one page, which it's going to do anyway. Now when I've made all of my selections, all I need to do then is to click the print button. There'll normally be a progress, a report there. That one flashed up and down pretty quickly there, and that's basically how to do a print in Excel 2013. So let's now look at some of the features of page layout and page layout view that can enable us to make a more sophisticated print of all or part of a workbook. If you click on the page layout tab, many of the options that can help you here are available on the page layout tab. And in fact, if you go into page layout view, we'll use one of those buttons down the bottom there. If you use these two together, it gives you pretty much the maximum flexibility for preparing a print. Now what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to reduce the zoom, so I'm going to get a little bit more on there. Obviously it'll be more difficult for you to see the detail. But by doing that, and bear in mind that the orientation here is still set at landscape, you can see how Excel 2013 thinks this particular worksheet will be printed. Now in fact it knows there's only one page, so don't worry about the others. The fact that they're greyed out means they won't actually exist if I print this. But this gives you a very good idea of how this particular sheet will print. And now we're going to use some of the controls to improve how that looks. So having established that we're only looking at the first sheet at the moment, let's just zoom back a little bit. That's probably enough. Now the first thing I'm going to do is to put a header on this, and if you do what it says there, click to add header, you can either type a header in there if you want something, or you can choose from a number of available standard headers. Now as soon as you go into that header you get a new tab. I mentioned right at the beginning of the course that depending on what you were doing, sometimes you'll get additional tabs, and in this case under header and footer tools you get an additional tab, which is the design tab within the header and footer tools. And on this tab you've got a number of options. I'm not going to go into all of them now because I'm really just showing you the basics of this. One of the options is to say I want to put something in the header, and if you look at the screen tip there, add text to the header such as the page number, the name of the sheet, or the date. Now let's click on the drop down and it gives us a number of standard types of header content. So for instance, I could put the full file name in there, or I could put something in like Toby A confidential page 1, or some other one of these standard types of content. And some of those are set out here: page number, number of pages, current date, current time, file path, file name. Now let's suppose that all I want to put in there at the moment is the sheet name. Now what it puts in is a special marker, what's called a field, and the field ampersand with the word tab after it, that'll be the name of the tab, so it'll actually say Toby A. Now I'm going to press the space bar, and I'm also going to put in the current date. That's another field, so I've got ampersand tab space ampersand date. Now when this prints it will put the name of the tab, Toby A, and the date. Now let's go down and look at adding a footer. Well, to add a footer it's pretty much the same sort of thing. Click to add footer, and in the footer I'm going to go back, I'm going to select that design tab again, and in the footer I'm going to put the page number, so that's another field, ampersand page. I'm going to press space, then I'm going to type the word of, then I'm going to press space again, and now I'm going to put the number of pages. So in this case that will be 1 of 1, but obviously in a much bigger sheet or perhaps when I'm printing a whole workbook it might say 23 of 75 or something like that. So ampersand page is the field that says current page. Ampersand pages is the total number of pages that are going to be printed. So that's a footer. So having entered the footer there, I can just get out of that, say press the tab key, takes me to another part of the footer. I can actually have a right hand side of the footer and indeed a left hand side of the footer and put more information in here. But this will do for the moment. As you can see, it now says 1 of 1. If you want to just flip back to the header says Toby A and then today's date. And then the last thing I want to look at in terms of these design features, I'm going to go back to the page layout tab, and here I'm going to look at the margins. Now the margins on the page can be set for a number of reasons. One of them might be that you have a lot to squeeze into a page. You may want to use narrow margins. It may be that you haven't got very much and you want to use wide margins to help to center things. That'll obviously depend on the specific situation you're in. But when you're working within a page, you can click on the margins drop down here to adjust the margins. If you click on that, you have a number of options: normal, wide, if you want to use more of the space on the page for the margins, narrow, and then you also have the custom margins option. The custom margins option, you can set specifically the margins top, left, right, bottom, and then margins for header and footer as well. So I'm going to leave the margins as they are, but what I am going to do is to just remind you of one other thing, and that is that, as I said in the previous section, in page layout view you can edit and work pretty much as normal with Excel 2013. So for instance, if I looked at this and I said, well, that looks a little bit messy, it's only going to come 2/3 of the way across the page, I could actually adjust the column widths right where I am. Column A here is selected. So if I went to the right hand edge, I've got the usual controls. I could make that a little bit wider, go to column B, maybe make that one a little bit wider, and so on. So I can go in and adjust and adapt things, and if I want something to look neat and well balanced in a printout, I can do it there manually in page layout view. And of course, having made all those adjustments, if I then go into Backstage View, go to Print, I'll now see a preview of my print, which includes my header, my footer, and where I've adjusted the widths of the columns. It's a much neater looking printout now. I'm sure you will have seen from this section, and particularly looking at page layout view, that there are many other options available there, and there's plenty of opportunity there for you to experiment with these to achieve really good looking printouts. So that's it on printing. I'll see you in the next section.